Let's get weird into it. Number 8. The Alaskan Volcano. Imagine you're a pilot for the United States Coast Guard, flying a routine patrol over the desolate, beautiful expanse of southeastern Alaska. It's April 1st, 1974. Below you are miles of untouched snow, jagged peaks, and the kind of profound silence that makes you question your own existence. It's majestic, it's pristine, and it's on fire. Specifically, Mount Edgecumbe, a dormant volcano that hasn't so much as coughed in about 9,000 years, is spewing a thick black plume of smoke into the clear blue sky. Your brain, which is not prepared for this, immediately sends a frantic memo to your hands on the controls. This is it. The big one. You radio it in, and within minutes, the entire region is on high alert. Panic starts to bubble. Is Sitka about to be buried under a river of prehistoric magma? Are we all doomed? As rescue teams and volcanologists scrambled, a helicopter was sent to get a closer look. The pilot, expecting to see a bubbling cauldron of Earth's fury, instead found a massive pile of old tires, doused in oil, burning merrily in the volcano's crater. Next to the fire, spray-painted in giant letters in the snow, were 2 words: April Fool. The mastermind behind this geological gaslighting was a local man named Oliver "Porky" Bickar. For 3 years he had been planning this. He waited for a perfectly clear day, chartered a helicopter under the pretense of checking on his cabin, and flew 70 old tires, smoke bombs, and cans of fuel into the volcano's maw. He was a patient artist of chaos. The resulting column of smoke looked so authentic it fooled everyone from local pilots to the Federal Aviation Administration. When the truth came out, the town of Sitka, far from being angry, celebrated Porky as a local hero. He had pulled off the perfect prank. Maximum panic, 0 casualties. The authorities, however, were less amused, though they couldn't find a single law he'd actually broken. It's not illegal to set tires on fire inside a dormant volcano, mostly because nobody had ever thought someone would be crazy enough to do it. The only real consequence was a mildly irritated letter from the FAA, and a legend that would be told in Alaska for decades. A reminder that sometimes the biggest disasters are just a man with too many tires and a brilliant, stupid idea. Number 7. The Taco Liberty Bell. On April 1st, 1996, millions of Americans woke up, opened their newspapers, and learned that a fundamental piece of their national heritage had been sold to a fast food chain. Full-page ads in 6 major newspapers, including the New York Times and the Philadelphia Inquirer, announced in bold letters, "Taco Bell buys the Liberty Bell." The ad explained that, in an effort to help reduce the national debt, the Taco Bell Corporation had purchased the iconic symbol of American independence. Henceforth, it would be known as the Taco Liberty Bell. The text was full of corporate doublespeak about civic duty and public-private partnerships, sounding just plausible enough to be terrifying. And your brain, even the patriotic part of it, does a quick, panicked calculation. Can they do that? Can you just buy history? The Lincoln Memorial, brought to you by Ford. The Grand Canyon, sponsored by Pepsi. It felt wrong, but in a world where everything has a price tag, it didn't feel impossible. The public reaction was immediate and immense. Phone lines at the National Park Service in Philadelphia were completely overwhelmed. People were calling their congressional representatives, screaming about the commercialization of democracy. News outlets, not wanting to be left out of a breaking story, called Taco Bell's headquarters for confirmation. Their press secretary, with a perfectly straight face, confirmed the story and added that they were hoping to inspire other corporations to buy up national landmarks. The chaos lasted for about 6 hours. Then, at noon, Taco Bell held a press conference to reveal it was all an elaborate April Fool's Day prank. They hadn't bought the Liberty Bell. They had just spent about $300,000 to convince America that they did. The disaster here wasn't physical, it was existential. For half a day, a significant portion of the country was forced to confront the idea that their most sacred symbols were just assets waiting to be liquidated. But for Taco Bell, it was the most successful prank in corporate history. Their sales jumped by over $1 million in the first week of April. The ultimate punchline wasn't just that they fooled everyone, it's that they got rich doing it. Number 6. Boston's alien invasion. January 31st, 2007. Boston, Massachusetts. Your morning commute is already a soul-crushing crawl, a symphony of angry horns and existential dread. But today, something is different. Taped to a bridge support, you see a weird electronic device. It's a black circuit board with a crude, pixelated cartoon character on it, its middle finger defiantly raised. It's a Moonanite from the Adult Swim show Aqua Teen Hunger Force. You probably chuckle and drive on, but you weren't the only one who saw it. Someone else, someone with a much more active imagination and a direct line to the police, saw a bomb. And that's when the city lost its mind. Within an hour, Boston was in a full-blown panic. Bomb squads, state police, and federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security descended on the city. Major highways were shut down. The Charles River was closed. Bridges were sealed off. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live footage of what looked like a city under siege, all because of a guerrilla marketing campaign for a cartoon about a talking milkshake. The devices were, of course, completely harmless. They were basically sophisticated light brights powered by D batteries. But in a post-9/11 world, context is everything. An unidentified electronic object in a public space is no longer a curiosity. It's a potential catastrophe. The city's emergency response system, a powerful and serious machine, saw a threat and did what it was designed to do: overreact spectacularly. The two artists hired to place the devices were arrested on terrorism-related charges. The head of the Cartoon Network was forced to resign. The parent company, Turner Broadcasting, had to pay the city of Boston $2 million in compensation for the emergency response. The prank here was innocent, a weird, nerdy ad campaign. The disaster was the immune response. It was a city punching itself in the face repeatedly because it saw a spooky drawing. A reminder that sometimes the most destructive force isn't the prank itself, but the panic it leaves in its wake. Number 5. The Great Spaghetti Harvest. When you think of the BBC, you think of serious news anchors, thoughtful documentaries, and a general air of unimpeachable British authority. So on April 1st, 1957, when the respected news program, Panorama, aired a segment about the annual spaghetti harvest in Switzerland, the British public took them at their word. The segment was delivered with the utmost seriousness. The distinguished broadcaster, Richard Dimbleby, narrated in hushed, reverent tones over black and white footage of Swiss farmers carefully plucking long strands of spaghetti from trees. He explained that a particularly mild winter and the virtual disappearance of the spaghetti weevil had resulted in an exceptionally bountiful crop. You watch as smiling women lay the pasta out to dry in the warm alpine sun. For a modern viewer, this is obviously absurd. But in 1957, you have to understand two things. First, television was a new and powerful medium. It wasn't filled with reality shows and cat videos. It was a trusted source of information. If the BBC showed it, it was real. Second, pasta was still an exotic dish in Britain. Most people had only ever seen it in a can, drenched in tomato sauce. The idea that it grew on trees wasn't that much crazier than the idea that pineapples grew on the ground. The broadcast ended, and the BBC's phone lines lit up. But the calls weren't from angry viewers who felt tricked. They were from curious Britons who wanted to know how they could grow their own spaghetti tree. With a perfect deadpan response, the BBC operators were instructed to tell them, "Place a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best." The disaster was a quiet one, a small crack in the foundation of public trust. But it was also a beautiful demonstration of human gullibility. It proved that if you tell a lie with enough confidence and authority, people won't just believe it. They'll ask you for gardening tips. Number 4. The Balloon Boy. October 15th, 2009. The entire world is watching a silver, saucer-shaped balloon hurtling across the Colorado sky. It looks like a cheap prop from a 1950s sci-fi movie, a flying jello mold adrift in the wind. But inside, we are told, is a 6-year-old boy named Falcon Heaney. The story is a parent's worst nightmare. A homemade weather balloon, an experiment by his storm-chasing father, had accidentally become untethered and floated away with the youngest son trapped in the basket. For 2 hours, cable news channels provided breathless, non-stop coverage. The National Guard deployed helicopters. Air traffic at Denver International Airport was rerouted. An entire nation held its collective breath, praying for a miracle while watching what seemed to be a slow-motion tragedy unfold live on television. The balloon finally landed in a field, crumpled and empty. The world braced for the worst. Had he fallen out? Was he gone? Search parties fanned out, combing the landscape for the small boy. The drama was unbearable. And then, he was found. Hiding in the attic of his own garage. He'd been there the whole time. The relief was palpable, but it was quickly replaced by a creeping suspicion. Later that day, during a live interview on CNN, the family was asked why Falcon had been hiding. Falcon, a 6-year-old who had not been properly briefed on how to lie to the entire planet, looked at his father and said, "You guys said that we did this for the show." The show. The entire gut-wrenching, nation-stopping spectacle was a hoax. Richard and Mayumi Heaney had orchestrated the whole thing in a desperate attempt to land a reality TV series. The prank wasn't just on their local community, it was on everyone. They had weaponized the media's insatiable appetite for a compelling story and held the emotions of millions of people hostage. The disaster was the colossal waste of resources, the emotional whiplash, and the cynical debasement of genuine human empathy. The Heens were sentenced to jail time and forced to pay restitution. The punchline was a sad one. In their quest for 15 minutes of fame, they ended up with a lifetime of infamy and a son who would forever be known as the boy who wasn't in the balloon. Number 3. The War of the Worlds. It's the night before Halloween, 1938. You're gathered with your family around the radio, the centerpiece of your living room. It's the primary source of news and entertainment, a magical box that pipes the world directly into your home. You're listening to a program of dance music when, suddenly, an announcer breaks in with an urgent news bulletin. An astronomer has observed several explosions on the surface of Mars. It's interesting, but you go back to the music. A few minutes later, another interruption. A meteor has crash-landed in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Then, the reports get more frantic. It's not a meteor. It's a metal cylinder. Something is unscrewing from the inside. A creature emerges, with tentacles and a pulsating V-shaped mouth. It has a weapon, a heat ray, that is incinerating everything in its path. This was, of course, the Mercury Theater on the air's broadcast of H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds, directed by and starring a 23-year-old Orson Welles. But Welles made a crucial, genius decision to frame the first half of the story not as a play, but as a series of simulated news bulletins. There were no commercial breaks, just an escalating sense of real-time dread. And it worked too well. For thousands of listeners who had tuned in late and missed the introduction, this wasn't fiction. This was happening. Your brain doesn't have a TV screen to check against reality. It only has the panicked voices of reporters describing a massacre. Your own imagination becomes the special effects department, and it's terrifyingly effective. People reportedly fled their homes. Phone lines were jammed with frantic calls. Some packed their cars and drove into the countryside, trying to escape the Martian invasion. While the scale of the panic has been exaggerated over the years, the fact remains that a radio play managed to convince a non-trivial number of people that the world was ending. The prank was on the nature of media itself, showing how easily the line between entertainment and reality could be blurred. The disaster was a nationwide anxiety attack, a brief but potent moment where thousands of people genuinely believed they were about to be vaporized by aliens. The ultimate kicker? The ensuing scandal and notoriety made Orson Welles a household name, launching one of the greatest careers in Hollywood history. Number 2. A deadly phone call. There is a type of prank so dangerous, so malicious, that it has its own name: swatting. It has no punchline. The only outcome is terror, and sometimes death. Here's how it works. A person, usually hiding behind the anonymity of the internet, makes a fake emergency call to 911. They spoof the phone number so it looks like the call is coming from inside their victim's house. They report a horrific, violent crime in progress, a hostage situation, a bomb threat, a multiple homicide. The goal is to trigger the most extreme possible police response, a full-blown SWAT team raid. Now, imagine you're the victim. You're at home, maybe playing a video game or watching a movie with your family. Suddenly, your front door splinters off its hinges. Men in tactical gear, armed with assault rifles and screaming commands, pour into your home. You are confused, terrified. You have no idea what's happening. Your brain can't process the situation. You might reach for your phone. You might stand up too quickly. You might make a single, panicked movement that is misinterpreted as a threat. On December 28, 2017, this is what happened to Andrew Finch in Wichita, Kansas. Two online gamers got into an argument over a $1.50 bet in a game of Call of Duty. One of them, feeling slighted, decided to swat the other, but he was given the wrong address. The address of Andrew Finch, a 28-year-old father of two, who had nothing to do with any of it. The police received a call about a man who had murdered his father and was holding his family hostage. When Andrew Finch, completely bewildered, opened his front door, he was shot and killed by an officer who believed he was reaching for a weapon. This isn't a prank that went wrong. This is a prank that achieved its intended purpose, to terrorize. But the prankster is a cowardly puppet master, using the police as their weapon. The disaster is a shattered family and a life senselessly extinguished over a video game. The man who made the call was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But that's not justice. It's just the tragic, irreversible consequence of a joke that was never, ever funny. Number 1. The Ultimate Delivery. London, 1810. The city is a bustling, chaotic symphony of horse-drawn carts, shouting vendors, and thick, coal-choked air. At 54 Berners Street lives a wealthy widow named Mrs. Tottenham. She is about to become the victim of arguably the most elaborate, disruptive, and logistically insane prank in human history. The architect of this chaos was a man named Theodore Hook, a notorious wit and prankster. He made a bet with a friend that he could make any house in London the most talked-about address in the city within a week. He chose Mrs. Tottenham's completely at random. The next day, the deliveries began. At 5 in the morning, a dozen chimney sweeps arrived to clean Mrs. Tottenham's chimneys. She, of course, had not ordered them. While she was arguing with them, a fleet of wagons arrived, each carrying a massive load of coal. Then came the cake makers, delivering dozens of wedding cakes. Then, a parade of doctors, lawyers, priests, and vicars, all told that someone in the house was on their deathbed. But Hook was just warming up. He sent tradesmen of every conceivable kind: fishmongers, shoemakers, piano delivery men. He sent dignitaries: the Governor of the Bank of England, the Duke of York, even the Lord Mayor of London himself. Each one arrived at 54 Berners Street for a fabricated appointment. The street, which was a narrow residential road, became completely paralyzed. The gridlock spread for miles. It was the world's first traffic jam caused by a single, malicious troll. This was more than a prank. It was a 19th century denial of service attack, executed in the physical world. Hook had found a vulnerability in the city's entire system of commerce and social appointments, which ran on little more than trust and handwritten notes. He exploited that system to bring the heart of London to a screeching halt. Thousands of people were involved, all unwilling participants in his grand, chaotic performance. And the best part? Theodore Hook and his friend watched the entire thing unfold from a rented room across the street, laughing themselves sick as the city descended into chaos. When the authorities finally began to investigate, Hook simply slipped out the back and disappeared into the crowd. He was never caught. He won his bet, and in the process created a disaster so perfectly pointless and absurd that it became a legend. And that's our time for today. More strange things are always coming, so I'll see you in the next one.